It's high-stakes Blitz from the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, and we've got a blockbuster matchup. American Super GM's Sam Shankland with the white pieces, taking on the king of speed chess himself, Hikaru Nakamura. Shankland kicks off with pawn to e4 and d4, grabbing the center. Nakamura responds with the flexible modern defense, fianchettoing his dark-squared bishop to g7 to control the long diagonal. The battle lines are drawn. Nakamura expands on the queen side, while Shankland prepares for opposite-side castling, gearing up for a massive pawn storm on the king side, starting with h4. White initiates the first major trade, bringing the bishop to h6 to challenge its counterpart. After the exchange on f8, Black's rook now has a beautiful open f-file to work with. And here comes a brilliant move from Shankland, knight to h3. This is a fantastic sacrifice, giving up a piece to remove a key defender and blast open lines for a kingside assault. Nakamura accepts the sacrifice, and the position explodes with complications. White's rook lands on h3, Black pushes the h-pawn, and both sides race to generate threats in this incredibly sharp position. Shankland continues his attack, but this next move is a slight inaccuracy, letting Black back into the game. The much stronger try was knight to e4. After pawn to d5, the knight hops to g5, posing immediate problems. The queen moves to e7, and pawn to g4 keeps the pressure mounting. But in the game, White pushes the pawn to f4, and this allows Nakamura to immediately challenge the center and equalize. And Nakamura does just that, striking with d5. After a few more developing moves, he solidifies his center, tucks his king away with queenside castling, and prepares to fight back. We now enter a deep, strategic phase. Both players bring their rooks to the central files, improve their piece placements, and carefully prepare for the next phase of the battle. The maneuvering continues. The c-file becomes the main theater of war, with both sides piling up their heavy pieces, each probing for the slightest weakness in the opponent's camp. A small slip from Nakamura. The king slides to a8, a passive move that misses a more active idea. Trading his knight for the bishop on d3 would have relieved some of the pressure. And that gives Shankland a chance to seize an advantage. But he misses it. The key idea was bishop to f1. Then, after knight to e4, the queen comes to e3, the black queen hits a3, and bishop to g2 completes the maneuver, leaving White with a nice edge. Instead of that, he plays the quiet king to a1, and the opportunity is gone. The game is level again. Another slight inaccuracy from Black. The rook moves to b7, but the engine still prefers the plan of trading the knight for the bishop on d3 to simplify the position. And so the complex dance continues. Both players are incredibly deep in thought, repositioning their pieces, with the tension slowly ratcheting up in this balanced but razor-sharp endgame. The pieces shuffle back and forth. We see some repetition as both sides test the waters, unwilling to commit to a decisive plan just yet. It's a real test of nerves. The final moments of calm before the storm. The queens and rooks eye each other from a distance as the players make their final preparations for what will be a tactical explosion. Nakamura shuffles his king to a8, but this is another slight inaccuracy. A better path was queen to e7, and after rook to b2, the knight returns to c5. Then queen to e1 and rook to c7, keeping everything solid. But in the game, the king steps to a8, giving White a chance to press with a pawn break. But once again, Shankland misses his chance. The king simply steps to a1. The move pawn to a4 would have created serious problems for Black on the queen side, but the opportunity slips by. And now Nakamura's queen becomes a monster, landing on a3. From there, it ties down White's pieces, creating constant threats and making it very difficult for Shankland to coordinate. The pieces continue their intricate dance. Both sides maneuver, preparing for the decisive clash that feels inevitable, with all the action still centered around the critical c-file. A small miss from Nakamura. The knight drops back to b8, but there was a tactical shot. Knight to a7 first, preparing to play rook takes c3 would have won a clean pawn. White doubles rooks on the c-file, bringing his rook to c1. The stage is set for a massive confrontation, and there it is. Boom! Rook takes the pawn on c3. Nakamura sacrifices the exchange to shatter White's pawn structure and launch a ferocious attack. A critical moment. How does White respond? The move played is an inaccuracy that lets Black's attack break through. The best defense was knight to g5, creating counter threats. After rook takes rook on c2, bishop recaptures. Rook to c3 and queen to e1 holds the position together. But instead, Shankland plays queen to d2, and this just isn't enough. Nakamura now has a clear advantage, but Nakamura doesn't find the most precise continuation. Pushing the pawn to b4 is a bit slow. The cleanest path was to immediately trade rooks on c2, and another slip from White. The knight hops to d4, but this allows a killer tactic. Black can now play rook to c5, and white is losing material. And Nakamura repositions his other rook to c7, preparing to double up and intensify the pressure on the c-file. White pushes the pawn to a4, but this is another inaccuracy that doesn't solve any of the fundamental problems. Black's attack is getting stronger, and here, an absolute shocker. In a winning position, Nakamura makes a massive mistake that throws everything away. The simple and winning path was rook takes rook on c2, bishop recaptures, knight to c5 comes in, and after queen to e3, queen to b6 seals the deal. But instead of that winning line, he plays queen to c5, and unbelievably, this allows white a stunning tactical resource to equalize the game completely. The save is on the board, but Shankland, under immense pressure, misses it. This is the decisive blunder of the game. The incredible saving move was bishop takes the pawn on g6. After the pawn recaptures, knight takes the pawn on e6. Rook takes b3 with check, and the king steps to a2, and suddenly, white is completely fine. A miraculous save. Missed. Back in the game, Shankland plays knight to e2, and this is it. It's over. Nakamura's attack now crashes through with decisive force, and Nakamura punishes it instantly. Rook takes the pawn on b3. Check. A brilliant sacrifice to rip open the king's position. The white king is forced out into the open, stepping to a2. And what a follow-up. Rook to a3. Check. A fantastic move, and the only one that continues the winning attack, forcing the white king onto an even worse square. The king is forced to b1, but this just walks into an even more powerful blow. The white king is now completely caught in a net. Absolutely stunning. Queen to a5. A brilliant queen sacrifice that completely dismantles white's defense. This is the game-winning shot that Nakamura had calculated. White has no choice but to capture the rook on c7, but it doesn't matter. The attack is overwhelming, and the perfect follow-up. Queen takes the pawn on a4. Another great find, and the only move that maintains the crushing advantage and secures the win. White tries to block with queen to b2, but black plays rook to b3, renewing the threat. The knight moves to d4, and now rook takes the queen on b2 with check. That was the point. White is forced to give up his queen. The king takes the rook on b2, but it's a completely hopeless endgame. White is down a queen for a knight. The queen comes to a3 with check, and the hunt for the white king continues. An excellent defensive try from Shankland. King to c2 is the only move to prolong the game and avoid an even faster loss. Nakamura brings another piece into the fight with knight to b6, preparing the final wave of the attack. But here comes the final mistake in a lost position. King to d2, pawn to b3, knight to c6, knight takes knight on c6, rook takes knight on c6. Instead of running, white plays knight to b3, and this is a fatal error. It walks right into a check that loses the knight and the game. And there it is. Queen to a2, check. This simple check wins the knight on b3 for free, and with his position in ruins, Shankland resigns. A wild, complicated game full of twists and turns. Both players made mistakes, but it was Nakamura's brilliant final attack that sealed the deal. Black wins. Shankland resigned because the position is completely hopeless. Here's what he saw. The king is forced to d1. Then queen takes the knight on b3 with check. The king runs to e2, but the queen returns to a3. After king to d2, the attack continues, and white is simply getting checkmated or losing all his pieces.